It's a few minutes after 7, it looks like, so we'll call the meeting to order and start with the pledges of allegiance.
This is going to not work.
Pledge allegiance.
In the
Thank you. First off, I'd like to announce today's special public meeting was duly advertised. The reason we did this in the evening was just before we actually get to the matter that is on the agenda, we wanted to get to what is somewhat of a precursor to that, and is why we have this item on the agenda, which is to go over pretty much the final numbers on the prison project and where that's going to be coming in terms of the prison budget. Before we get into that, though, is there any citizen input on agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, before we go on to item 5, I'd like to get Todd Rothermel, our project manager from Alexander, was going to give an overview of where we stand here at the final stages of the prison project.
Well, Todd, before we go to the second page, let's see, are there any questions? I mean, we're basically, the construction phase of the project, we're at $1,098,000 under budget. And if there's any questions on that, or anyone has any comments, if you'd like to make it before we go to the second page. Questions by the news reporters, anyone else?
It's the 800,000 contingency there.
All right, on midday,
Else? Okay, Todd, second page. Did we hand that out? Did you hand that out yet?
yes, I did. On the second page, to construction. Category. Medical devices and all those items that go into
Questions on that page? Just one thing I'd like to say is soft costs are part of any project. The construction costs are separate. That's actually the building of the building. The soft costs are basically, for what I've been told, the percentage of what the building cost is. So the larger the building cost, for example, if instead of 22 million, the building cost, if it were 32 million or 42 million, that soft cost would rise at that percentage because it's based on the cost of the construction. So again, these are all our soft costs that we incurred during this building, and we still ended up with close to $1 million under budget for the entire building, including the soft costs.
there may be a few more dollars available as well.
Any questions on that?
I think, one of the important things to look at is if you compare, because a lot of it has been made, and there was, people who felt that we should have gone to the Celltech site, and there's been a lot of information put out, a lot of misinformation put out about that. My understanding, Todd, and I think you said you brought those numbers along with you, was the original project, because Alexander was also the project manager under the prior administration, when they had put the plans together and they had a projected construction cost for the original prison that was proposed for the Celotex property. And that was before any changes had been proposed with the additional pod, anything like that, is my understanding. And what was that?
Yeah, back in February 23rd, 2016.
It was just the construction of the building, no acquisition costs, no site development, and, okay. I know that, people may recall there was some things in the newspaper at the time about the fact that, we had encountered issues at that site that were going to inflate the site development costs. We were going to have to build the whole thing on pylons down to bedrock because of some soil compaction issues and things like that. And again, we have an entire soft costs included project costs of 32.6 million roughly, which is less than just the construction cost of the Celotex site without including any acquisition, any site development. My understanding, I know that there has publicly been information put out by all three commissioners accepting a number of $46 million as being the total cost of that project when you include all those soft costs and so forth, as compared to the 31 point, we'll round it up, 31.7 million. So.
Do you have a question?
Todd probably does. You can make that, I mean, if you need to make a copy of it, or if you have extra copies of it, yes, we can. So,
I have another page.
okay, I guess, yeah, Sam. Again, it's your tax dollars that we're spending here on this project, and we feel it's important that people understand why we made the decisions we made and what the result of that is. While Sam's handing that out, I guess the one thing I would add as well is that when we would have incurred, had we gone the Celotex direction and spent the 46 million on that project, what we would have had at the end of that was just a prison building. No other buildings, no other development. Here, having gone this direction, we were able to realize the vision that we had for corrections overall in this county, which was to start to treat some of the symptoms and some of the issues early on so that we don't have people coming in a revolving door environment into a warehousing type situation at a prison. So one, this facility gives us plenty of room for things like classes and so forth within the facility, but we also have other buildings that frankly are or will be generating rental income for the county, but also, more importantly, will be providing detox services, rehabilitation services that we're bringing outside companies in who are handling that, who know what they're doing, who will be handling those services, and also the youth counseling program that's up there as well. And again, what that gives us is the ability to try and stem the tide of people that are coming into a prison facility and hopefully address some of the issues they have before the problem elevates to that level. Had we gone the other direction, we would have had just the prison. We would have had to spend millions and millions more if we wanted to have those other facilities. So, just
before I go to the third page, I just want to say, I have been told by many people that I took up to the site while we were building, when we started building, that any project of that magnitude, usually if you had a budget of 22.8, you were always going to go over. I had some people estimate 25 million, and I just want to say it was a joint effort from everyone who was involved, from the construction people that came from the courts and all every 2 weeks, from Todd and Buchard Horn, because there were times when we'd go to meetings and I know Todd had something up his sleeve because there was a change order that we didn't expect. And there was always ways that Todd or someone found ways to make it up somewhere. And for a $22 million project to go under budget, I think is probably very, very rare for that to happen. And I just want to thank everyone who was involved in that project. The second part, the last page that I just passed out, was because of purchasing, of course, the property that we did. We also had some more revenue that was brought in since we purchased the property. Some of the revenue we had from TrueCore, I think to date, to this month, we have basically revenue of about $233,000 in rent from TrueCore. They have been paying all the bills, so this is basically all revenue that is a plus for us. When we also were dealing with the 168 acres that we got from the prison project, our solicitor, Frank, found other properties that surrounded the property. I think there were 300 and some acres. And at that time, he said we could annex them to the prison property, which brought our acreage like to 500 and some acres. And of course, if we didn't have the prison property bought, that would have not even been a thought in our mind to add acreage. But because we did, Rick and myself both voted to add that property to the prison project, to the property anyway.
At no cost.
At no cost. And we received, after we added it, pipeline revenue of $267,489. That is all a plus for the county residents, money that, thank God we did add the property, and money that came in that actually helped with the project. And the proceeds from the auction that we all attended of $25,000 a few weeks ago, selling the contents of some of the buildings, and of course the agreement of sale for the land for the medical marijuana on the top 10 acres of $1.5 million, which gives us revenue of about $2,025,489 that we brought in since we have the project. And if we add that to our prison project, some of this revenue from TrueCore and when Gadenzi opens up is revenue we're going to get every year, it actually brings the project down, final cost to the taxpayers of the entire project down to $29,672,675, which is, if you compare it to what the budget was at the Celotex property, it's a savings of over $16 million from what's going up there. Now, one thing I want to point out, and I don't want to be naive, there were some costs for us up in the property up there because we did have a full-time maintenance person up there, and we did have security up there, and I would estimate that is probably somewhere in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. So if we would take that, say $327,000 off of that final number of $16,327,325, we're still at somewhere around $1 million or $16 million in savings from what we would have done at the Celotex property. And it was a monumental project, people. It was a lot of work, a lot of hard work, a lot of time, and the results, I think, show the hard work that the people put in. Any questions from the audience or anyone would answer at this time?
And before we move on, the only other thing I think I would just like to point out is, I know a lot of people said, well, there was $2 million invested in purchasing the Celotex site. There was money that went into some remediation efforts and so forth, which totaled up to probably about $4 million. I think you brought it up just a moment ago, Justin, or somebody did. The way, right now, we still have the Celotex site. So if it was purchased and you consider it an asset, it's an asset we still have available to us at some point to develop or sell. If you consider it a liability because of the issues with the property, then frankly, it's a liability that just would have been exacerbated and made worse by building upon it and investing even more structure and money onto that site. It is not a purchase that the majority of this board made. Is not a purchase that I don't think that we would have made. Hopefully, when you look at this project, you see that we make decisions and think about them a little more than perhaps the prior majority of the administration did. Why they did that, I don't know, but again, we're moving forward, and frankly, even if you net that, let's say it's $4 million that was invested off of that, and if you assume that we never get a dime out of that Celotex site, you can see the difference between the $46 million total cost for that project to get what we would have had down there, which is just a prison, and that's it, versus the, what is the final number here, Todd? It was 32. So 32.6 million for this project, and to have what we have up there, and to have a chance for a future for a lot of the people in this county who are suffering from addiction, for young people who we can reach out to before they end up in that prison. To me, that just is a no-brainer. I don't, I'm sure that there will be people who choose to pick and choose certain issues and criticize it, but that is just undeniable. And the total figure for the cost of that site has been publicly identified and accepted by every single member of this board. So, if there are no other questions or comments regarding that, I guess we will get to the item number 5 on the agenda. We'll have a report by our financial advisor, our financial counsel, I guess, for the consideration and enactment of ordinance, I guess it's O-01-18.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Joe Pierce. Your financial. More restrictive requirements of the Securities and Exchange Commission. I will not hold myself. I did try to. Other. So I'll give a brief summary of number 5, and then Laura will do a quick. Back in July 14th, project as a scale, you might say. Not include purchase of any. Left over.
you. And basically what this is allowing us to do is, because we did have such significant savings on the prison project, this ordinance amends the borrowing that was done to allow us more flexibility to use it for things other than just the prison. And I think we had included in there some amount of other possibly, alterations to our courthouse or things like that. It's allowing us more flexibility because we have a number of projects that are going on at this time, many of which, the 911 project is a prime example, were left over from the prior administration. And what we found out when we started to be able to talk directly to some of the contractors involved is that decisions were made in order to have the public see that these projects were lower in cost than what they should have been in reality. And as many of you know, when it was built out to those specs, they flipped the switch on it, last fall, and we did not have coverage in some significant areas of the county for our 911 system, which is a public safety issue. So you may recall earlier this year we approved a project to build out some additional towers and provide some other equipment in order to remedy that. Obviously, there's costs to that, and what this will allow us to do is to use some of the savings that we've had on this project towards those projects, so that when we ultimately do the borrowing that we would have had to done on those projects, we wouldn't need to borrow as much. We've already borrowed this money for the other project. To the extent we've saved money, we'll use it on that. The other project of significance that this covers as well is, you may have seen where we've purchased a property up in Milton in order to house our district magistrate office. We were in a position where we were renting. I think Commissioner Chickatano at the last meeting gave a fairly detailed report on how much that was going to cost us over the next several years, because the landlord was going to require that we upgrade much of that space at our expense, and then our rent was still going to increase significantly. We originally were planning on building something out on a property that was owned by our housing authority, but an opportunity came up when we ran into some red tape with that to find another property that really suited our needs very well and really just needs some basic interior remodeling to block it out the way that it needs to be for the district magistrate's use, and that he's very happy with, and that will allow us to avoid having to pay rent in the future on an ongoing basis. And that's at a significant savings, both over what the prior project was and certainly over what we would have paid out in rent. So this allows us to fund that project with some of the proceeds, the excess proceeds from this project as well. So we're trying to be good stewards of your money, and hopefully you like getting the news of savings and projects coming in under budget by government for a change. If there's any other questions, I'll take those, and if not, we'll get on to the actual motion to approve that ordinance. Yes.
Something. Just to clarify for everyone here, although this ordinance does expand the umbrella of what we are allowed to, of capital projects that we're allowed to pursue with these proceeds, by no means are we allowed to use any of these proceeds for any general fund purposes. So we can't use it for any general expenses that the county may incur. It is limited to these capital projects. And trust me, Joe and Laura are very strict on me as far as my explanations of what we're going to use these proceeds for. So, but I just wanted to clarify that.
And I think also to clarify, these are not projects that we're entering into just because we have extra money and we're looking to spend it. It's things that we know we have to do, such as the 911 system, in order to complete that. Or in the case of the district magistrate office, it's something that if we put this money out now, it's going to result in immediate and significant savings, both immediately and over the long term. And I want to, just as Sam had mentioned, our experts that we worked with, Alexander, Buchart, working with us hand in hand on the prison project. Likewise, Joe and our financial advisor, and Joe, your team have been instrumental in us being able to structure these types of things and to really give us the flexibility that we need as a county to be good stewards of your money, of your tax dollars, and to be able to really do the most that we can and get these projects done that need to get done, and reduce the burden to our citizens. So we know we throw some things at you sometimes that some rather unusual things that we want to try and do, and we really do appreciate the fact that you've worked with us and been such good counsel in that regard, both of you. So, any other questions? Okay. All right, then I will. Is there a motion to enact ordinance 0-01-18. It's an ordinance of the Board of Commissioners of the County of Northumberland, Pennsylvania, amending pursuant to the Local Government Unit Debt Act, a certain ordinance duly enacted by the Board of Commissioners of the county with respect to the incurrence of debt, describing the projects for which said debt of the county was originally incurred, describing the amendments to the projects, and specifying the realistic estimated useful life of said projects, as so amended, authorizing and directing the officers and officials of the county to execute and deliver documents and to take action as may be necessary relating thereto, authorizing the payment of expenses, repealing inconsistent ordinances, confirming the prior ordinance, and providing when this ordinance shall become effective. The intent to enact this ordinance was properly advertised according to law. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, I'll second the motion. On the question?
I think it's my turn to comment now. Working backwards, I think there was at least one or two times the chairman said that every single member of this board agrees that the original Sunbury prison budget was $46 million. Well, I'm a person on this board, and I agree that was one of the construction estimated prices. We had Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. When we originally came in, we were working with a much different operating budget for construction costs from a prior board, which was in the mid-30s. When we took a look at the building as was estimated to be completed, we had decided that maybe we needed an extra pod, or we wanted to have a women's unit, or we wanted to maybe have a residential unit. So there were additional drawings done up to estimate what those additional things would cost. When they came back, and I don't remember now, sitting here, whether it was A, B, C, D, which one was given to us, but one of those was in the $40 million range, and I think it was pretty clear none of us wanted to move in that direction. None of us. So when you say the original Sunbury prison budget, it would have depended on which one of those plans that we would have agreed upon, and I never would have agreed upon the $46 million as a working budget. So I want to say something about 911, blaming a prior board for not funding a project. It's not exactly true either. If you look at the amount of money, and I did bring this up when we were talking about taking out additional funds for 911, you see a number that's eerily similar. What they need is pretty close to what it cost to buy the Northwestern site. So, in my opinion, had we not purchased that, that we could have used and applied that money to completing the 911 project, which we still very much need. Looking at the sheet that Commissioner Chickatano handed out, I do not dispute number one. It says the lease revenue from Trugor Behavioral Science, do not dispute that number. Pipeline, do not dispute that number. Proceeds from the auctions of the furnishings negotiated to remain with the campus at the time of purchase. That one, I don't dispute the number, because obviously that is what they got for it. I just recall a time when the commissioners were trying to get the public on board with Northwestern, sitting here telling all of the public that we were going to save money because everything we needed was in that building, whether it was a cot or kitchen appliances, everything we needed was in that building. I'm just going to suggest to you that we didn't need so much in that building. In fact, we had to build a brand new building because we couldn't use any of the buildings. We had to start over. Number 4, the agreement of the sale for the medical marijuana company, $1.5 million. Well, I don't think you should, cash that right now. We don't hold that money. We haven't been given that money. All they paid us was $1,000 for the option of purchasing it, and there's some contractual language that they could, in my opinion, very easily get out of and never pay us a dime. And I think you might see that come to fruition. So I don't think we should count our chickens before the eggs have hatched sort of situation. So those are some of the numbers that I dispute with the other commissioners. And when you also look at just the delay, there's a lot of argument between the three of us about how long it would have actually taken to hit reset and start all over again, and what did that really cost us as far as designing a brand new prison and paying the design firm to build all that or construct all that and come up with that on paper. There was a cost to that, and it just defies logic if you don't think that it cost additional money to design an additional brand new prison. It wasn't like we took the same design from Celotex and just plunked it onto Northwestern. It also defies logic to conclude that delaying that project, whether you think it's 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, didn't cost us any money. It did cost us money. I've been giving to the press monthly statements of how much, excluding payroll, it costs us to house our prisoners in 7 other counties. You can dispute whether or not you would have been paying that in our own prison. I've heard that. We're not paying anything more than we would have paid in our own prison. That is an absolute lie. Of course it costs us money. And that was one of the factors when we considered moving from Celotex. How much would it actually cost us? Okay, so my gut tells me, looking at these numbers, that the cost pretty much would have come in the same on what the three of us would have agreed to. The delay was the additional cost and the additional purchase of that property, which going forward will have costs associated in maintaining that piece of property. It's massive. And transportating the inmates back and forth to the courthouse, and the increase in staff, which also is denied at this point in time. But just from my perspective, and I'm telling you, they don't agree with anything I said. It defies logic that we have spent millions of dollars and all they want to tell you is how much they've saved you, okay? So I think it was a very serious capital project. It cost a lot of money. I felt it when I paid my taxes, and I'm here to tell you that in the end, I don't think it saved us anything. At best, you came out the same. Only 911 didn't get completed. Now, with this ordinance, while you can't use it and apply it to general fund purposes, I did verify with Laura prior to this meeting that you can use that money, this savings, to pay down debt. That's what I think we should do with it. Pay down debt. We don't need another capital project. This magisterial district justice rents like every other magisterial district justice except for the one that has the place in this building. Okay? So I don't think we need to take on any more projects of this size. I think that we should take the savings that was shown here on this piece of paper, and I think that we should apply that to debt. So just wanted to say my piece.
Yeah, I have a couple things. First of all, I have already showed the press and everyone else the timeline. If we would have went back to the Celotex project, it would have been finished exactly the same time. It's in my office. If anybody wants to go back, I still have it on the sheets. You can look at it, and I think some of you took copies of it. Second of all, the Celotex property, $46 million. If anyone wants to see what Miss Best thought the Celotex property was going to cost, you may come with me back to the office. I have a video where she explains the cost is $46 million. The third thing, when we built that prison up there, half of the prison was remodeled. It's not all brand new prison. Half of it was remodeled. The gymnasium was remodeled into a cafeteria. All the 3 dormitory parts were only remodeled painting-wise and all. It saved us millions and millions and millions of dollars remodeling instead of building brand new. I cannot write, so I couldn't write down all the other issues that I wanted to talk about. But even the inmate cost. The inmate cost back in 2014, when we were housing our own inmates, was $361,000 a month ourselves at that time. So you cannot go and say now when I hand the reporter a number for what it's housing our inmates, that's what we'd be paying. It's not what we'd be paying. And again, why someone can't be happy with saving taxpayers $16 million is beyond me. Why someone can just make stories, and I have videos, you can come back and look at them, anybody that wants to come and say she didn't say it was $46 million, I don't understand. I just don't understand why we keep going in this direction. Let's work together. We have another year and a half or whatever. Let's work together and do what's right. I know when the Motorola project came and it was under budget, we signed the new contract with Motorola. Miss Best never signed the contract, even though at the meeting she voted for it, and she, she was 100% before it because officers could no longer hear and use their radios, and we didn't want anyone to get in trouble. We signed the Motorola numbers. Let's work together. Let's try to get this thing going for the next year and a half in the right direction. Every time something's done, the magistrate, I explained the magistrate deal up there, they were going to cost us, increase our rent, double, and make us pay $100,000 to remodel a building that they would own. And we can buy a property for $130,000, put maybe $70,000 into it, and never pay a rent again. Why isn't that the right thing to do? Why is it right to pay $3,500 in rent to someone when we don't have to pay anything and we can save the taxpayers that $3,500 a month? I just don't understand. It's beyond me.
The only reason that your rent was going to jump like that was because you were going to knock a hole in the wall and double your square footage.
Correct.
Did you expect to pay the same amount of rent with double the square footage?
Well,
I mean, that just...
Miss Best, when someone says, we're going to knock a wall out, and it's going to cost you $100,000 to knock the wall out and remodel it, and then we're still going to double your rent. I think that's a problem.
They gave you a letter with 4 different options.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes, they did.
And not all of those
And
sum
I'm-
up to what you're saying.
Yeah,
You're just
listen, I went
misleading.
up to the buildings and went through and talked
I
with
know
them.
that you did.
And-
I
and-
talked to the landlord myself. and
Did you
were
go up
just
when they
being-
invited us up and go through and listen to what they had to
I
say?
didn't want to do any more capital projects. I think we should be in a holding pattern. I think that you should apply what you have saved on this project to debt. That's all I'm saying. I don't think that
hey,
we should be spending any more money.
Maybe that's what we will do. We haven't decided what we're doing, but now we have an option. I'm saying we do not go up to Milton and pay hundreds of thousands, or I forget the amount it was going to be after 10 years, when we can buy something for 100 and whatever and never have to pay rent again. I just don't understand why anybody would want to pay rent forever. It's beyond me.
Well, and again, in the spirit of trying to work together, I mean, I think it
What about
deserves
the
a-
other magisterial district judges then? Are we going to build them their own
Nobody
place as well?
told us to give them $100,000 to remodel and then double our
You wanted to
rent.
knock a hole through her wall and double your square footage into the other building.
Correct.
Because both the police and the district magistrate were here letting us know that there were safety issues at that building because they were right on top of each other. There was issues that had to be addressed. And again, in the spirit of, the fact, trying to work together, one, I want to thank you for acknowledging a moment ago that there were savings on this project.
On your construction.
Yeah,
but the total project, absolutely not.
If anyone would like to see the video, I have a video in
At
my
any rate,
office.
There
And the one-
was
all right,
an option
and-
to build a prison in the $40 million range. That's how they got me up to view the Northwestern site in the first place, because I said, I'm never going to build that option. There were other options. We had option A, option B, option C, and we were still looking at it. I even considered going back to the old prison, ripping the back off and building it. We looked at other sites. There were numerous options, and to talk about it as if this was the decided on option, okay? That is so misleading to use that number to tout savings. I get that you got to justify this thing, but you go a little bit too far to say.
I think Sam's being a bit. I think you're being a bit unfair because because I think we should give credit where credit is due. Ms. Best did vote for, approve, and sign the agreement of sale for the Northwestern site. And
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
No, I did not. No, I did not. I did not. 2 days before you closed on Northwestern, I called.
You signed the agreement of sale. You signed the agreement of sale.
I did sign the agreement to go ahead and go through with that, and then I ran the numbers. And 2 days before, I called a press conference and I said we can't afford it. And I laid out a very detailed explanation of why that was. And I laid out a very detailed explanation on what we had already spent and what we were going to spend and what the delay would cost. Details with numbers to back it up. So I did not sign the sale. I did not go to the closing.
Signed the agreement
and I
sale.
vote.
That's all I said, was you signed the
We
agreement sale.
signed a non-disclosure agreement for them to hold it, for us to go into sales discussions. The closing date, I absolutely did not sign that. I did not.
You signed the agreement of sale. You signed the agreement.
So let me
of sale
ask you
to
this way.
enter
Let me
into-
ask you the
That's all I'm
difference.
saying is.
Let me ask
because
you
when
a
we talk
difference.
about things like delays and moving from one at that point we were committed.
No, we
had
were
to,
not.
We had to move away. We had to cancel contracts. on the other
we
side. Okay.
were
We
not.
have emails
That's
from you
okay.
insisting that we cancel.
Let me
the
tell you something.
contracts
That's
on
like
the cell
saying
text
that's
site.
like saying
Oh my
this
God.
medical marijuana company,
Okay.
because we signed this agreement with them, that they must now put their medical marijuana plant there and they must give us $1.5 million. Is that the truth? No, it's not. They could get
We've
out of
given
that.
ourselves the
That's the same
opportunity- we've
thing.
given ourselves
That's the same
opportunity
thing.
to have that.
And that's
provided-
the same thing
Yeah,
that
okay.
I signed.
Okay, whatever. All right, well, here, we got to take the vote. All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there anything further on the question? All right.
Clarify my own understanding. Did the options A, B, C on prisons or?
No, when she refers to options A, B, C, frankly, Ms. Best came up with different options that she
We all
wanted to
did.
propose. Yeah, but I would say two of them were ones that you would come up with, and you yourself threw them
And
out
when
and
the
said that they
num-
weren't feasible.
Because they weren't. They were
Okay,
too
they weren't.
costly.
They weren't.
But we did. We all sat around, we looked at it, and we moved things around. And when the cost came out, and one of them was in the $40 million range, absolutely not. I said, absolutely not. So there were many different options. I'm not denying that this wasn't one of the options.
Some of the options weren't even on that site. There was, I think at one point she had
Elks,
talked
the Elks
about buying the Elks and some other buildings and
Right.
building the prison right around the courthouse.
Right.
And that was an idea that Ms. Best came up with, and she herself, after looking at it, said,
Right. When I saw
"That's
the
not
numbers, I
feasible."
said, "No,
I
it's
think
not
another
feasible."
one was, I forget, well, you said about renovating the existing one. You yourself determined that wouldn't be feasible, wouldn't give us what we wanted. The other options were, one, even if we were to go back to the original option, before they talked about adding a pod.
We never had a number on
yes,
the old
the what-
prison.
the-
On the old prison, we never had a number. We had a number on the Elks. We had a
But you
number on
kibosh it, you didn't want to do it. You
because it
withdrew,
was
you
it
didn't
was
want to do it.
$48 million. And
48 million on the old. Okay.
no, at the Elks, at the Elks, and they couldn't even do the Elks. They had to build it like around
Todd,
the
did you
corner.
want to say something? Because the original on the other prison, which I know Ms. Best brought up.
That was determined
at
by a
that meeting,
prior
saying
board.
This was the cost of the other prison was construction only, and that was 33 million. That was before there was talk of adding a pod. That was before they even heard about the issues of having to go to bedrock. That was just construction costs, not site, not anything. Is that correct?
If you allow me a moment.
Yep.
The $33 million estimate was on
Right.
Without soft costs, without acquisition, without site development, yes.
was before the discovery of the unsuitable.
Todd, there was another issue with water runoff, another $500,000 issue that was going to be added to all that we didn't know about at the time, correct?
DEP, at the same time this was ongoing, DEP
And then Todd, excuse me, but do you remember, and thank you, and do you remember we had, you and I didn't get along so well in the middle because when you said this was not Buchart Horn, this was Alexander's estimates, et cetera. There was that late email that we got that talked about, wait a minute, I forgot to tell you guys about this cost, and there was some dispute about square footage. Okay. Buchart Horn said that wasn't true. They said, we are still sticking with the original number. There was a huge dispute. We had a huge conference with both your firm and their firm, and they held fast to what, 36 or 38 million, something like that, okay? And Alexander felt that they missed something in calculating the square footage. It was very, very confusing. But at the end of my point here is that they're using this number and saying that that's something that we all agreed on would have been the final cost. That is misleading because this was a very fluid discussion. Okay, there were options, there were problems, there were disputes between Alexander's firm and Buchart Horn. So to sit up here and say every single one of us believed, or I have video when I was talking about one of the options, as if I'm lying to you all now that this wasn't incredibly difficult, is just misleading. There were numbers all over the place. It was extremely fluid at the time as to what it was going to cost, and two different firms disputing that. And that's all I want to add.
Again, I have a video anyone would like to see of a number of 46 million that was not put out by
Just
me.
so people have an apples-to-apples comparison too, the number, we still didn't take the vote, the number you're referring to, the 33 million, which you said is the lowest estimate that there ever was for the Celotex just construction site. What would the apples-to-apples number comparison for the construction costs for this project be?
On the bottom of the first page of my initial handout, there's a tab that says
Construction costs, okay.
construction costs.
All right, and in terms of, and then you add, on any project, you have what you refer to as the soft costs, site development, all those things. How, in your opinion, how would those site development costs, given what you were seeing down at the Celotex site and the issues we had, would they have compared on a project like that compared to what we actually incurred at this? Do you have any kind of a?
Soft costs are generally based on a percent.
Would it be fair to assume that a project that is over $10 million more in terms of construction costs would have significantly higher soft costs than one that was
They
over
would
10?
be, the ratio would be similar and the number would be higher.
Okay.
The only thing before we leave, we have this meeting, there's a savings of something, 12 million, 16 million, somewhere in between. It's a good thing for Northumberland County. I hope it's not portrayed in the paper as a big fight and argument because the citizens saved 12 to 16 million dollars. This is a good thing. I don't know if there's ever been a project where that much money has been saved, and I hope it's portrayed that way in the paper.
Okay, there's been a motion, a second. We've had comment. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed. Motion carries. All right, thank you.